right. Good morning. Good afternoon, wherever you are in this great country of ours. Welcome to the October session of the Humpday Hangout with our brothers Mike Dugan, Dan Shaw, and Daryl Liggins. This month, we're going to talk about Halloween fires. We're going to talk about potential dangers in these haunted houses, Halloween stores, some things that ourselves and ChatGPT can sort out. Maybe protect us as firefighters. Daryl's laughing. He's got a story about that. We're going to talk about that later. But before we get started, I would like to mention and thank our friends at Key Fire Hose. Always exceptional. My opinion, the best hose on the market. And in addition to that, the company that appreciates firefighters the most, they consistently sponsor hands-on training at a great cost to themselves by shipping fire hose all over the United States. Anyone who requests it gets hose shipped to them and lets students put their hands on this high-quality hose. And without the sponsorship of Key Fire Hose, that a lot of these hands-on conferences would really be struggling, some potentially not even happen, because you can't come up with that quantity of hose in that short of time. So again, we'd like to thank our friends at Key Hose. And without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves. I am Clark Lamping, Clark County Fire Department Captain, Engine 38 on B Platoon. And on my screen to my left is Captain Mike Dugan.
Mike Dugan, retired captain from the FDNY. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Mike, are you going trick-or-treating this year with any grandkids?
No. Nope. We do a neighborhood thing.
A neighborhood thing, okay.
It's called trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat, okay. Fantastic.
And everybody comes with their cars, open up their trunk, put their candy in there, and everybody brings something to a neighborhood. It's almost like a block party.
Right.
I live on a cul-de-sac off another cul-de-sac. So we're probably going to have about 30 families here with their cars, and they decorate them for Halloween and wear their costumes, and all the kids come running around. We have a great time.
Perfect. What are you dressing up as this year, Mike Dugan?
I am probably going to be Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
I might be Uncle Fester.
Or Uncle Fester. Okay, great.
I have a good picture of Uncle Fester.
Good. Yeah, Jimmy Davis from Chicago, he said he's not allowed to participate. Well, they don't do trunk or treat in Chicago anymore because they just kept finding bodies in trunks of cars.
Yeah.
So no more trunk or treat in the city of Chicago. All right. Retired Chief Dan Shaw. Dan Shaw.
Thanks, Clark. Retired Assistant Chief Operations for Fairfax County and one of the technical editors for Fire Engineering Magazine. But as Mike said, really glad to be here. Always look forward to this every month.
Perfect, brother. And are you trick-or-treating this year, Dan Shaw?
No, I'm not.
You're not? Come on. Free candy?
I think it's in college. I mean, plenty of people will be here in my neighborhood. We'll have lots of people here coming by our house.
Coming by the house? All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Dan Shaw. Do you have any live candles when you have the kids come up? Do you use any live candles, or do you use the little fake battery-powered candles when you decorate your house?
I don't know if we use either one of them, to tell you the truth.
Okay, perfect. The reason I mentioned that, because one of the leading causes of injuries to young trick-or-treaters is burn injuries, because all of their costumes are all plastics and highly flammables, and people use real live fire in the jack-o'-lanterns and use candles in their decorations, and these little kids walk up and potentially have their Halloween costumes brush against a candle or something, and now we're off to the races. We have a young child with burning costume on. So
remember those masks we used to have when we were kids, right? It had the one little rubber strap across the back. It was right in your face. It created a greenhouse effect inside there.
Yep, absolutely. High as a kite by the time you got done trick-or-treating.
Exactly. You just rebreathing.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so a little bit off topic, but let's keep our trick-or-treaters safe this year as well. Okay. Daryl Liggins.
That's something that's never occurred to me. Their costumes with those candles right by the entryway. Did ChatGPT tell you that one, Clark?
No. I've been doing Halloween safety lectures to kids in schools since long before ChatGPT ever showed up.
Oh, that's great. Okay, Daryl Liggins retired from Oakland, California, a couple years ago, and still glad to be a part of this. And when when Dugan was talking about the trunk or treat, in the city I live in, we just had a ribbon cutting for a brand new training center. It's great, and they haven't built a new training center out in this area in like 30 years. So it's nice to finally have a new training center. I was glad to go to the ribbon cutting, but inside they have these light panels have you guys seen these light panels? It can make it, there's some smoke that gets pumped into the tower, and these light panels to give the theatrics of a fire. And since it is October, I had brought up to the training captain, I said, a trunk or treat would be great down here. I could see kids down here, going from a fire apparatus to a fire apparatus or the back of a car and through this little smoky Halloween kind of themed first floor of the tower with their parents. And yeah, that'd be cool. I think there's room for something like that.
You could sell tickets and potentially pay for some of that training tower.
Yes.
In your training center, Daryl, are there any Class A's anymore?
This one, they actually opened 2, and there's another one in a different part of the city that has a fire prop, and it is just all gas prop.
All gas.
Yeah.
So no more Class A's? No burning any Class A's?
No.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
So we were talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about Halloween. I haven't, to memory, any special hazards on Halloween other than, kids in the street and EMS calls from, cars and those unfortunate things that happen. Criminals taking advantage of being able to go into a store, things of that nature. But I asked our wonderful friend ChatGPT that everybody is using, good, bad, evil, or otherwise. It is a tool that can be great to instantly create a research outline. And so I asked, and it gave us a pretty cool outline of all kinds of things. And I think throughout the year, when we're dealing with any time of year, high winds or special events or whatever, it might be able to create an outline. We used to have this thing in Oakland called a roll call reading, and it would just be something the company can read real quickly at roll call to spark some conversation or debate or something like that. And that's something you might use for, hey, we have this event coming up. What are some of the special considerations we should have around this time of year or events? It might fill in some of the gaps that we're missing or in our blind spots.
I just thought, I used to do all these lectures on trick-or-treating safety. I'm sure if you did the same thing, if you chat GBT trick-or-treating safety, I wouldn't have to go showing up and doing all these lectures anymore. All right? Give us some of do you remember some of the things they mentioned, Daryl? Well,
I have my phone, as everybody on this call probably does and listening. Yeah. So the quick one was stores. And I know we're always thinking about fires. So in stores we had, and we'll talk about some of this, and I know you have some photos, highly combustible merchandise, which we know everything's plastic. It's like a 99-cent store, really, right?
Yeah.
Just a temporary 99-cent store where everything's going to catch on fire.
And we just talked about that, the kids coming in contact with the jack-o'-lantern, right, in their highly flammable costumes. Well, that's one costume. Now put 100,000 costumes of those plastic costumes inside of a store and see how that plays out for you.
Yeah, I don't think people are making Halloween costumes out of natural wool or
hemp or anything, right?
Yeah.
And in addition, what do you think that the Halloween store actually called the fire department and said, I'd like you to come evaluate the sprinkler system to make sure the sprinkler system in this old building is appropriate for the fire load we've just installed? Or in your agency, do you even have enough of a fire prevention division that will make it out to those companies and make sure that this fire protection system is appropriate for the type of the fuel load?
Well, in these stores, I will say that we've probably all experienced. We did commercial inspections at the company level, and it's most common around Christmas time, but in these specific stores around Halloween time, they get so much stock that they're filling up the stock room. They're stacking it to the ceiling to where sprinklers will not have adequate coverage. They are blocking exits, and everything is highly combustible. So it is important to get into these stores and make sure that they are keeping stock where you have clear aisles. The sprinklers will have coverage. They're not blocking the extinguishers that are available or the house lines that are available. They are worried about theft, so sometimes they are purposely blocking exits, so people aren't coming in the back and filling up a van full of stuff. So yeah, the storage and the stock is definitely going to be one of the big problems in these stores.
And it's especially exaggerated on these temporary businesses, because if they rent an empty building, there's no racking systems in these buildings. So, and they're going to be there from August to November. So they're not installing racking systems. There's no racking systems there. So what do? You just keep putting product on the floor and put product on the floor and put product on the floor. And I've got some pictures we'll show a little bit later about some of the hazards. We'll have a discussion about some of those hazards.
So I'll just run through a couple more that I call my ChatGPT Einstein, which many people probably do. It's probably the most used name. Electrical overloads, blocked exits we just mentioned, compressed gas hazards, where I guess balloons and things like that, and crowd potential within the building. So that's the first part. We could go through some of the others later when we get to haunted houses and other tactical considerations.
Now, Dan Shaw, you came across a pretty unique building, didn't you? If Mark, we could get you to bring up that picture that Dan Shaw shared. Dan Shaw sent this picture out to us, and I immediately got chest pain. And if you're a firefighter, seriously, Dan, if you're in a commercial building and you're not nervous, you're not paying attention, right?
Yeah.
I took one look at this building and I got chest pain. Talk about this a little bit, Dan.
Yeah, no, I was up in Philadelphia for the FSRI summit and just walk around Philly in the morning and stumbled upon this building, which was, probably 100+ year old building that now, probably because it's vacant and owners are looking to, have some renters in there for 3 months. It's going to turn to this Halloween store, which means they're going to probably put up partition walls. They're going to put up stock. Where they're going to put all that stock. And it goes back to what Daryl was talking about. I mean, if we're being mindful in the fire service and want to kind of have that mindset of being just ready for any of these disasters we're going to face, we should be out pre-planning this, right? Looking at this and saying, like, all right, how are we going to get to the multiple access points? Like, what are going to be our access points to get into this? Because we don't know what the inside of that's going to look like. Are we going to do searches from the front and the rear or the sides, or what's the ventilation going to be like in that? Because the ventilation is going to change. And we feel pretty confident when you walk inside that store, to Daryl's point, is that fuel load going to overload that sprinkler system that it was intended for? And if it is, what's going to be our primary type of attack? Are we going to roll up with the tower ladder and come down low and just crush that thing because we don't think it's occupied? Because then you throw in that variable too, is the time of day. Is it occupied or unoccupied? Because if you have a hard time getting in, imagine how hard it is for the untrained civilian to get out. So yeah, I mean, all these are, and again, it's from a business model, it's genius. You have vacant commercial space, which you saw after COVID. Commercial real estate took a dump, so now you have all this vacant commercial space. I'll rent it from you for 3 months, and then I'll put this type of store in there. And as Mike Dugan said, as soon as this is gone, the Christmas store comes in. And that's a different fuel load and a different composition. So always being out in that your first due and looking at these buildings and not just simply pre-plan by saying, yeah, it's going to be a hazard, but look at the strategic and tactical objectives we want to achieve on any one of these type of fires and see how we would do it. Just pre-game this whole entire thing.
Now, also looking at this picture, is this a 2-story store? Is there Halloween stuff on that second floor where the windows are decorated and offices above? Because very honestly, if I had an office on the second floor, I wouldn't want them putting that stuff on the windows to my office space, creating a problem. So I'm not sure if there's a second floor there, and if we're going to have consumers on a second floor there, and where are
Yeah.
the exits on the second floor? How are they getting out? I mean, knowledge of the exits for these people is going to be minimal to none, and we're going to have a problem there. As we also said, blocked exits because of all the stock and everything else in there is going to be crazy. When you are out in your neighborhood, whether you're going out to pick up a meal, whether you're out on runs, if you see one of these things, you have to bring it to the officer's attention, or the officer has to bring it to the next, whoever's working the next day to, and you have to go and inspect this building and get, as you said, Dan, the tactical knowledge of this building, because this building's been vacant. It might have been vacant for a year and a half, 2 years. And now you did an inspection last year in, or even earlier this year in maybe July, it was a vacant structure. Now it's full. It's a totally different fire. It's a totally different building. And this is a multiple story one. Some of the single story ones can be a huge problem. I had a friend who was a fire marshal in a local jurisdiction. They went out for a look at a Halloween store that had been in a vacant standalone store. And they went in there, and it's a fully sprinklered store. But the sprinkler system was shut off because the owner of the property didn't want to worry about keeping the place that hot and if the pipes froze or anything else. So he shut the sprinkler system off. Everyone's going in this place thinking that this place is fully sprinkler protected with this heavy fuel load of all these costumes and those blow up things that people put all over their front lawns and all that other, and it's all flammable stuff. So we have to really be very aware of where these are. And if you see one in your district, you have to go out and do an inspection. And it can be, as Dan just said, it can be the Halloween, fall store, and then it can be the Christmas store and all that. And this is a brilliant business model, as we said, but it's also brilliant from the store owners' places. They have all this stuff, they bring it out, they rent the place for 6 months, have their 2 biggest days, and then they don't pay rent for the other 6 months of the year. And then they just store the stuff in a storage unit, and away they go, and they start this all over again.
Yep, that's exactly what they do, Captain Dugan. I talked to the one store that I went to, and they said, "Oh yeah, everything on November 1st, everything in the store goes 50% off. On November 3rd, everything in the store goes 75% off." And then they close the doors and they put everything in the storage unit and they start it all again. That's exactly right. November 4th, they're closed. They rent it from August 4th to November 4th.
Hey, when I was talking about the storage in the back of these buildings, I'm really thinking of the area I work in, and Clark is probably similar. And when I think the area of Mike and Dan, are you guys dealing more with basements than rear stock rooms? The term pipe casing isn't very well known out here. I think Oakland and San Francisco are a couple of the few cities that still have pipe casings. Are you guys familiar with that specific name? There may be other names I'm not familiar with. I saw a great display at the Denver Fire Museum. If you guys are ever in Denver, it's worth a trip to their fire museum. But on the first floor of a building with a basement, it's where there's a cover that you can remove, and then there's a pipe. So if you're in the basement, you just see a grid of pipes spaced out, and that was to put a distributor nozzle or a cellar nozzle in there. A lot of ours have now been covered up with laminate flooring or carpeting, things like that, but they do exist throughout a lot of downtown areas with basements, and that is good access to use distributor nozzles and cellar nozzles, because I would imagine those basements could get really, really full, and obviously making it down there with a hand line could be a losing battle.
My first question on that, Daryl, would be: wouldn't a shaft that travels from the basement into the occupied area, wouldn't that create a path for smoke and fire and heat to travel? Or is it
Yeah,
some sort of a lid on it that you can contain it?
there. So it looks almost just like a cover you would find in the street that is like a manhole cover,
Okay.
but that big around. It's brass or cast iron. It may be it's cast iron in just a brass color, and so it's very well sealed. I have not experienced a fire in a building with those, and I was only familiar with a few buildings within my district that had pipe casings. But that is specifically made for access for those cellar nozzles. Yeah, but it's kind of days gone by that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Yeah. Interesting. Mark, can you bring up some of those pictures that I shared, please? Okay, so I visited one of our pop-up Halloween stores, single story. You can see we have a drop ceiling in the front. This store was about 30,000 square feet in a strip mall. It was masonry. CMU was the walls. CMU is kind of an ordinary construction, and this is just a sample of plastic. All of your plastic costumes wrapped in plastic, and just the plastic wrapping on these costumes increases your fuel load significantly inside of a store like this. Again, probably did not notify the fire protection authority that we're going to put all this plastic in this warehouse. Do not know if the fire protection system is appropriate for this type of a fuel load. I don't know what was in this store before, but I just found it interesting to see them much fuel load. And this was actually, I was impressed. This is actually one of the cleaner ones I've been to. It's really well organized. How about the next picture, please, Mark? Good. If you can see down there, see at the very end of that hallway, there's a real tiny exit sign. Well, that is an exit that's been blocked by a curtain for aesthetic purposes. And at least this one, I don't know if they knew we were coming or something, but they actually made sure that you can see the lighted exit sign. But most cases, right, there's no doors separating the front and the back. They just buy they rent out this one big area and they just section it off, and they don't want anyone walking back into the stock room. So there's no doors, there's no fire doors, anything that separates the stock room from the actual storeroom. And so they just create these temporary barriers and they put curtains in front of them. So, and a lot of times your egress on your Charlie side is going to be on the other side of this. So pipe in, gentlemen. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump
Now,
in.
was that a fully sprinklered building, Clark?
It was fully sprinklered. Yes. Fully sprinklered. Yep.
Okay.
How about the next one, Mark? Here's another example of, again, one of those egress points. They covered over the exit sign right there. They just took a curtain rod and they put a black curtain right there. So that is one of your primary egress points to the Charlie side of the building. If you're in this store and you have low visibility, both firefighters and civilians, are you going to be able to find this real narrow aisleway with a blocked egress with no lighted sign to get out? And I don't think this store is any different than most of the other ones. I'm pretty sure this is standard. This is a Spirit Halloween store, just like the one that Chief Shaw showed us in Philadelphia. I'm pretty sure this is SOP for the way these people set up their businesses.
Clark, the other thing, we're out there a pre-fire plan like you guys are, is to have a conversation with that staff, right? Because they're temporary staff. So how well trained are they to do what to do? Because, our first priority is protect life, then property. We're not really there to save plastic costumes. So having a conversation with that staff, like, what exactly are they planning to do if they did have a fire? Because, as you said before, that fire is going from small to large very, very quickly.
Yes.
So how well trained or versed are they in how to get out of the building, navigate that building that they're not really familiar with? Because your previous picture showed a lot of aisleways that easily get stuck in. So, having that conversation with a completely untrained staff in a building that they're unfamiliar with is pretty important.
Pretty important. And that, and also, Chief Shaw, how about evacuation plans? for even the staff. Now, I typically go, whenever we go to a business similar to this, I always ask the manager, the owner, do you have an emergency evacuation plan? And because we're in uniform 100% of the time, what do they say? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, can you share that plan with me? And this manager looks me in the eye and says, yes, our evacuation plan is if the building's on fire, get your ass out of the building. That's what he said. That was his emergency evacuation plan.
30,000 foot view, man. 30,000 foot view.
That's it.
He's going to get consumed with those semantics.
Yeah, exactly. Details. Yeah. And so I asked him, hey, would you be interested in us helping you develop an evacuation plan? And of course, my crew pulls me aside and says, come on, Cap, as busy as we are, now we have to go to assist people in making evacuations plan. And I said, absolutely. Who is that going to help? If this manager has an appropriate evacuation plan and they practice the evacuation plan, whose benefit is that? In addition to his staff getting out of the building quickly. Ours, right? Don't you want to pull up to a wood shop or a warehouse and have the whole company standing out front saying, I'm the manager, everyone's out of the building, here's our rally point, everyone's accounted for. Absolutely. I don't want to go into a 30,000 square foot building and start searching for one person that could be missing. We don't even know if he's at lunch or what. So that's why I always ask, can we help you put together some kind of a fire evacuation plan? And my crew gets mad at me all the time.
Hey, no good deed goes unpunished.
Well, absolutely not. Absolutely not. What do you got for us?
But and I always talk about engine operations. We have to think about big water early here. These are going to be losing battles with a small line. You're talking about so two things that come to mind. One is just the uninterrupted ability for a fire to just spread through wide open areas. These aren't going to be small compartmented areas like a house. And that sign is telling you everything is lightweight, everything is plastic, everything is going to burn instantaneously. Nylon and polyester and plastics are taking this over. And there's a high volume of fuel load. But when it comes to larger hand lines, the stream also has an uninterrupted ability to cover a large area. There's larger reach, there's more penetration, there's more ability for that to gain control of this fire. We don't want to be playing catch up. That picture Dan showed earlier in Philly, if this gets out of hand, you kind of have one shot. You can start getting vertical fire spread, auto exposure from floor to floor because we wanted to make our job easier with a small line. This is something that I am less likely to want to be on an aggressive interior attack because, like Dan said, we're there to save people, and yeah, we may have people in there, but the greatest ability to save them is to stop the fire aggressively.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And something else we can take into consideration, Daryl, is I don't know if you have an SOP on commercial fires. I don't know if your boss is only going to allow you to go so far into the building. That in the research I've done, we're typically looking at about 200 feet. 200 to 250 feet is what the majority of the urban fire departments are willing to send companies into a large commercial like this. So on your note, how can we extend our reach, right? How about one of our ground monitors? You can extend your reach. I can send a stream, and we did a very scientific research project at my job. We went to a parking lot one day when there was no wind, and we pumped our ground monitor appropriately, and we just simply measured. That was it. Very scientific, and we figured out, now this isn't breakover. This is last drop. We got 200 feet. 200 feet from a ground monitor on a 1-inch tip, flowing about 365 GPM. Now that's not an effective stream to 200 feet, obviously, because we're way past breakover, but last drop was 200 feet. So if your boss says you're only going in that building 200 feet, if you drop that ground monitor, one firefighter with 0 calories being burned can put his knee on that ground monitor and flow with a 1-inch tip, 365 GPM at a distance of 200 feet. And all he's doing is moving it back and forth. Tell me something else on the fire engine that one firefighter can deliver that much water with that much ease and not get beat up, not sit on a Keenan loop, not have multiple guys kneeling on a 2.5. And that same device, right? If you take it down to the 1.5 tip, we're now flowing over 500 GPM, 500
Yeah.
GPM, 200 feet away, just filling up that whole structure.
Well, we certainly don't have harsh weather conditions like our brothers here from the East Coast, but I was at a good fire in a building that looked quite a lot like that photo Dan showed or shared with us, and it was pretty much fully involved. It was a lot of radiant heat, but we had the fire mostly knocked down, and we had very high winds that night, and we were at a point of keeping people back for collapse, and we were trying to spray water in, and it was so windy. I remember a ground ladder on the exposure just blowing over, and we had a 2.5 in like the first lane of traffic, and we're trying to spray water in, and the stream is just blowing sideways before it hits the building. I think we've all experienced fighting fire in heavy winds. And since we were at the point of really just like overhaul and basically filling this place up with as much water as we can, we weren't really concerned with volume, but the stream wouldn't even get in the building because the winds had picked up. So we set up one of those little ground monitors that are getting really popular now. And just because of that increased mass of water coming out at a higher pressure, it just defeated the wind, just punching right through it. So October is a time when weather starts to get really adverse. And if we're dealing with high winds, you may think of a larger, more powerful stream, not just for volume, but for that additional reach under that higher pressure. Deck gun, same thing. I think they're just really underutilized tools. Sometimes we're waiting for the fire to just be much larger, but it could be a great tool early on.
And I add what you're saying, man. We talked about this at FSRI at the summit, and Steve Robertson has a great point where he talks about this. Like, it's about the velocity, right? And really the root of that is that we don't spend enough time talking about fire stream management. I mean, that is just something we teach in basic fundamental firefighter 1 and 2 is, hey, apply 8 pounds of force on the back of this bale and magic happens. But what happens when magic doesn't happen? We want you to be a hydraulic engineer and understand, like, here's the volume of fire, here's the space, how can I penetrate through that fire to get the little droplets of water to absorb those BTUs. And it's not only just the gallonage, it's the velocity, it's the amount of flow you're taking. And to your point, Clark, I think when you look at your SOPs or your operations manuals, whatever you have, I'll go back to my former organization, right? So we have operations manuals for all the occupancy types. Now, strip shopping center manual is very clear. We get 2 trucks in every single box. And invariably, we have a good amount of tower ladders. We don't just have like one for the entire county. But when you get a tower ladder and a straight truck on a box, it is mandated the tower ladder goes to the front and does not go to the back because you're wasting that asset. You got almost $2 million asset that should be in the front that has the ability to get down below zero and flow up to 2,000 gallons of water and crush a fire. And we're talking about 500 gallons. Imagine putting 2,000 gallons of water in there. And if you train it really well and you're effective at it, like all you have to do is recognize the situation and bam, we execute the plan.
Yeah, Clark has a fantastic point on staffing. We all work for large departments with a lot of people, and we know that's not most of the fire service.
Yeah.
And to have one firefighter on one of these monitors that has the ability to flow twice the volume of a 2.5 at a higher velocity by themselves is just a tremendous force multiplier.
Yeah. Well, and on the same token, Daryl, to your point, like even when you do have good staffing, I wonder how many times companies go out there who are in a house with a tower ladder or a neighboring company with a tower ladder and really just hit a stopwatch and see how quickly that engine can hook up to a hydrant, that tower ladder can get the outriggers down, they get the ladder down, they get the hose hooked up and they're flowing water. How quickly can they do it? And, we used to always train this when I was a captain of like, everyone has a plan, just like in a football game. Like if you're the right bucket, you're always the nozzle firefighter. Your job was to take the supply line from the back of the engine and stretch it to the tower ladder. and then you'll coordinate with the driver of the tower ladder when he wants that water hooked up. And then everyone, it should happen without people talking. It's not the time when you pull up to a large volume of fire coming out of a commercial occupancy to say, I have a plan I've been thinking about, and I'd like to try to execute it right now at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to happen.
If you were stretching a 2.5 or a supply line to one of those rams, what kind of hose would you be using?
If I could choose any hose, it would absolutely be key hose, Daryl Liggins. And the reason I would choose key hose because it is proven on the fire ground, on the training ground, that is the superior hose in the fire service. And great that you mentioned that. These monitors are to be supplied by 2.5 combat ready hose. And we store our ground monitor on the back, already hooked up to the 2.5. We reach up, pull it down, and I can shoulder 150 feet of hose and have the ground monitor on my shoulder, and we can advance into a building. Those monitors are designed for interior attack. It's not an exterior attack, and I'm not real happy with the way my department rolled those out. They bought every engine has one of those monitors on it now. And I walked into the station one day and it's in a box on the back of the station. And I said, well, what's this? Whose is this? And they said, well, it just showed up. We think it's ours. I said, well, put it on the engine before someone comes looking for it. All right. Absolutely hide that because we want to keep that. And never got any kind of real education on it. There's a QR code on the box. Hey, just figure out how to use this. And so a lot of companies, I visit these companies and they just have it in a compartment. And I said, what are you doing with that? And they said, oh, it's just another defensive weapon. I said, no, it is designed to be an offensive weapon.
Yeah. And that is more common than not with thermal imaging cameras, a lot of equipment. So you're being very candid, and a lot of departments do fall into that. And with that said, you guys had one of the more successful fires that I talk about quite a bit, using that aggressively to put out it was the former Monte Carlo high-rise fire. You guys,
Monte Carlo fire, yeah. Monte Carlo fire, yeah.
And that was because of that additional reach and provided over a 2.5, correct?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. But,
yeah, thank you to our friends at Key for sponsoring this. I would definitely take a look. I was always one that when it came to different types of fire hose, I wanted to look over the fence and try things out, try it out, flow water. There's a lot of different models and diameters and stuff. And it's always good to compare in relation to what you currently have, look over the fence and see if there's a way to maybe improve your operation. So thank you to them for sponsoring this.
And if you reach out to your distributor, they would be happy to come out and lay all the hose out and let you put your hands on it and try it out.
Clark and Darryl, you guys bring a good point up of talking about our success stories, right? If we don't learn from our success stories, and typically we're not really good at that, because if you ask anyone, and I know Jay Bresler does this when he talks about some of his stress stuff, is, think about all the fires that went bad that motivate what we do, and everyone can pipe up and name one. And then think about the fires that went really well, and people were like, they can't seem to remember what fires went really well, the names of those equally. And, if a fire goes bad, and when we look at commercial occupancies, when we see multiple loss of line of duty, firefighters and line of duty deaths, it's usually in commercial occupancies. And when you have a line of duty death, they're going to come do their investigation. They're going to scrutinize your training, your doctrine, your accountability, your operational prowess, right? And to your point, Clark, hey, we bought people with this piece of equipment. You didn't train anyone. And every line of duty death you see, they'll say, hey, thermal imagers, they weren't used. Why weren't they used? They were bought 20 years ago. Who was trained on them? The people who got them 20 years ago. And then no one else gets trained on them. And if we parlay that into what we're talking about today, right, between the occupancies or the haunted houses, when they're training the haunted houses, think about the way we train. I bet you if you walk into every academy, and Daryl's probably true for the academy you just walked into, they will have a burn building, whatever class material they're burning. And then they'll probably have a different building or a different area that's the maze building. And when do we ever bring those two together? Where we train for firefighting in mazes until we actually go to one in like a haunted house like we saw. And I think that's where history is kind of slapping us in the face. And I had to go back and look and see some historical fires that occurred, if there was anything that kind of motivated that. And I think we all know that like NFPA codes and standards typically come from disasters. Bad things happen, and then it reverts in that. So NFPA 101, which is the special amusement buildings, part of that standard comes from the 1984 fire at Six Flags Adventure Park in New Jersey, where 8 teenagers died inside that structure. And essentially what it was 17 connected semi-trailers turned into a haunted house. And the park staff felt because it was temporary, they were exempt from building codes. And so they had no sprinklers, no emergency lighting, none of that. And it's full foam, it lights off, people can't get out. And so, you see we have to go deal with that. But even our training doesn't prepare us for that. Because of what we do. And I'm not saying don't go light fires in your maze structure, your maze building, but you start to plan for these things that, is when I teach with Doug a lot, he always shares the kind of mentality of what they taught in Proby School up there is that you crawl, walk, and run with scissors in the dark. So you don't just go right from crawl to run with scissors in the dark. Otherwise, you're going to have failure. But walking through that, the evolution of when you face this, where would you face it? Learning from our history of like this fire that happened at Six Flags in 1984, and then pairing all that together and trying to amp up some of that stress to get you ready for that environment. So when you do go to that building at 2:00 in the morning, that haunted house, that it's not completely new to you, that you at least have some upper hand on that fire, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talked about line of duty death reports, it often opens up a lot of other things that are happening every day on the fire ground. We had a near miss, and I just spoke about this up at the Pacific Northwest Fire Conference. But I'll tell you a couple things I was really surprised at in the report. And I'm going to mention this because this is true of a lot of fire departments. And I think it can really catch a lot of us by surprise. One is if you don't have your bottle turned on. So if you are investigating one of these buildings, maybe it's an electrical smell or something like that, and who knows, maybe it's a hidden fire in a stockroom you get to, your pass alarm doesn't work. I know a lot of us when we came in, and certainly when Dugan and I came in, I'm not sure, what year did you come in the fire service, Dan? Yeah.
1992.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we came in at the same time. We had to turn on our pass alarm. We had to, or you had the clip.
Box.
It was clipped on that box. So when you came out, it automatically snapped off. So it would, turn on, and you'd have to remember to turn it on. And now they come on automatically, but your bottle has to be charged. So even investigating, it's good to have your bottle charged. The other thing is, in this report, only 9 of 21 firefighters had a flashlight, and only 2 members had their flashlight on when they entered the building. So if a firefighter falls unconscious or something, or lost or disoriented, and they don't have a flashlight, that really shocked me. That I always had a box light. I had my chest light, and then I had an extra little flashlight because at some point we all have somebody saying, "Hey, give me your flashlight." Well, they're not going to get my main flashlight. I'll have an extra one for them. The flashlight is easily overlooked. It's really important. Keep it charged, keep it on you. And then the third thing was the thermal imaging camera. In this close call we had, only 4 of 9 of the thermals were taken into the building and turned on. Turn it on early. Turn it on when you're in the rig, when you get the call, so you don't have to worry about that. I think some people don't want to carry them, maybe because they're big boxes, but now they make these small little cameras that are less money than your iPhone that are great. But if you're getting lost or disoriented in a structure, something happens to you, you want to have a flashlight, you want to have your pass alarm on, and you want to have a thermal imager to get you through this thing. Don't take it lightly just because you're investigating or it seems like it's not much. Always go into battle hard. go in there ready to overwhelm it and be prepared. Have your game face on for all of these.
Hey, Daryl, that's a great point. With your organization, when they're in recruit school, do they train on that simple function of turning your flashlight on every time? Like in every environment, like get the muscle memory, like the minute you cross the threshold, flashlight on.
No, because for the most part, it's still a organization where most members buy their own flashlight, or there's 2 box lights in the back for the members. When the box lights are larger, kind of like to set down, and the swivel head to aim at the ceiling or something like that. So no, that little thing is not trained on, and it took a close call for us to realize that.
Yeah, and I think your point is it should resonate with everyone who's listening, right? Is like if you're a company officer and you're doing daily training, making that part of the muscle memory. Like whenever we walk and cross the threshold on a structure to go in and investigate or whatever it is, just pop your flashlight on. Because in high stress situation, you're going to go back to that muscle memory of I click this one on, I click this one on. You can always recharge your battery. It's not a big deal. But just getting that imprinted is important.
I had always liked that box light. I had the FDNY style box light. A company's not in service, Advanced Lighting. They had one. I think they sold to somebody else, but a lot of companies make that type of light because I liked lighting the area in front of me. I used it all the time, even just on EMS calls, just to light up the stairs when you're carrying a patient out. You want to light up the roof so you can see, but our wonderful friend ChatGPT here, when we were talking about hazards for Halloween, trip hazards were a big one. There's electrical cords all over, and there's things on the ground. You want to be able to see where you're walking,
Yeah, and it's even the small things. I mean, I remember teaching with Pete Lund years ago, and one of the best tips he ever shared with me, he was sharing with students, and it kind of dawned on me, was where you wore your flashlight. And so many guys, you see guys on the fire ground, they have the flashlight hanging down by their hip. Okay, well, I'm not going to be walking around in a fire. I'm going to be crawling around a fire. So if I'm crawling, where's that flashlight doing? It's essentially just picking up everything off the floor. So he's like, oh, just right underneath your armpit, like a European handbag. And the minute you start crawling, it swivels up. It's pointed right in front of the path you're going. I'm like, okay, never thought of that.
That's
and so it's just simple tips that you share with people to educate them about, like, not just, hey, here's the tool, but here's when you use a tool, create that muscle memory. And I learned this when we were doing stuff for NFPA 1400 and the thermal imaging training. How many times you hear people say a thermal imaging camera? And unless it takes pictures, it's not a camera. And, it could be semantics of just making a different delineation between those two, but it's a thermal imager. If it doesn't do this, it has this part, but we get caught in that vernacular of just using that same term over and over again. And that's where, there's so many things. That's why no one should ever say, like, I have nothing to train on today. I don't know how that's possible.
Right.
And I think the other thing, because kind of getting a little bit back on point, just because of, I want to just talk for a couple of minutes because we only have a few minutes left on these pop-up haunted houses, because they scare the crap out of me, because most of them are opened only at night. They block exits on purpose to keep people in there, and they're decorated and they're dark and they're scary, and they're putting people in there who don't know what's going on. And I know there was one a while back where somebody got panicked and lit a lighter to try to see where they were going and started some stuff on fire in there. They put it out, everything went fine, but the ramifications if something like that happens are insane. I mean, there are places all over that have these haunted houses that people love. And I mean, I remember when my kids were little, we did one, my wife and I did one in Central Park. It was hysterical. There's a castle in Central Park called Belvedere Castle, and they had a haunted thing in there, and they did it by ages. And they said, if your kids are under 8, bring them at this time. 9 to 14, bring them here. Over 14, you can bring them here. And they were all not Hollywood, Broadway actors acting, and it was great. But it was done for the kids so as not to traumatize the little ones. But, you look at this, and this was a castle, and it's a real castle. It's made out of concrete. So there's not that much to burn there. But in some of these old homes in Queen Anne's and Victorians where they rent them to do this stuff, it's crazy. You have a huge fire load.
Yeah, we go back to the station nightclub fire, right?
Station
I
nightclub.
mean, horrific how quickly that just blew up, and then all those people got stuck in the doorway.
Yeah. And, you know, you can go back almost to the ghost ship also and talk about that, even though it's not a haunted house or anything, but it's it's along the same vein. It's along the same line. And it's some scary stuff you have to be aware of. And if they're in your district, you have to go out and check these out.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely pull the rig over and check it out if you hear of something. A lot of neighborhoods have like that haunted house, and it's often a private dwelling, and we don't have like, you know, maybe right to it, but maybe it's a good opportunity if they let you in or something. Certainly if it's a commercial haunted house, we want to officially get in there. But
and very honestly, Daryl, you can say to the people who are doing it, hey, listen, can we take a look here? Because just in case it's not up to what we consider code, you're taking on that liability. We're here to help you and just make sure you're safe.
Yep. Now, Mark, can you show a couple more of those pictures real quick before we wrap this up? So yes, here is what I discovered at that Halloween store. And we talked about how they're not going to have racks. This one must have had some pre-existing racking systems, but take a look at this. So anytime you have packages in cardboard stored directly on a floor and not on a pallet, now those boxes are susceptible to water from sprinkler systems or water from hose lines. What's going to happen when those cardboard boxes start filling up with water? Right? They're going to collapse, are they not? What happens if we send 2 engine companies in low visibility down that aisle right there? First of all, we don't have dedicated aisles because we have stuff blocking the aisles. We're going to send a couple engine companies down there. And what is going to happen to those boxes as we send engine companies with the hose lines down there? Potentially, those boxes are going to get knocked over in our path of egress, right? So I know you're thinking, oh, it's only 3 or 4 boxes, but in zero visibility now, and I know we could walk in there with good visibility, and by the time we go to leave, it's zero visibility. Has that ever happened to anybody? You show up and we've got good visibility, and when it's time to go, we're on our knees.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we're on our way out now. We're crawling our way out, and all this, we think we're in the right space. We're leaving the same place we came in, and all of a sudden, we come across a stack of boxes. Is that enough to make you think, even though it's a couple boxes of Halloween decorations, whatever it is, some lights, some costumes, is that enough to make you question, wait a minute, this wasn't here when I showed up. Am I in the right place? Did I make a wrong turn? And now we have started what we call the firefighter disorientation sequence. And the disorientation sequence is first you're disoriented, then you're lost, then you're out of air. Show me another picture, Mark, real quick, please. That's just a roof structure. How about another one? Here's another perfect example. No dedicated aisles.
Look, even that roof structure, you go back to that previous picture.
Yep. Same question, Dan.
I mean, look, you have fire that involves that. That is nothing but just chips of wood glued together. That would scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, those are the fake I-beams. Yep. Go next picture. So here again, and on top of it, the product is not on pallets, and the product is not somehow shrink wrapped or bound together. Any kind of a nylon bounding or some kind of a plastic shrink wrap will at least hold that product together. Not in this case. If it's not bound or shrink wrap, we're going to come in contact with that product and we're going to knock that stuff over. Not if, maybe, possibly. We will be knocking that stuff over and it will be falling into our limited path of egress. And again, is that just enough? Is that enough to make us question, are we in the right place? One more picture, please, Mark. There you go. How's that one? Right? Just like Daryl said, it's a temporary structure. That product comes off the trucks and it gets stuffed anywhere they can find place for it. No racking system, no kind of packaging whatsoever, no kind of banding, no kind of shrink wrap. Everything's on the floor.
I think I got a right there. That'll knock it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Clark, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Going back to that roof picture that we looked at, are
Okay.
those 24 on center?
No, those are definitely not 24 on center. Those are like 48 on center.
So that looks really far away.
Okay. Now, do you have a a policy not to put somebody on the roof of that building? Because
No,
I
we
would
do not.
okay,
We-
I would not put somebody on the roof of that structure. If there was any indication of a fire in there, because I would be worried that the fire is up at the roof level and that person would be able to possibly fall through that roof.
Yeah, and the fire will be at the roof level, Captain Dugan, because that's where the sprinklers are. You're not going to get sprinkler activation until there's enough heat 30 feet up to actually pop those sprinkler heads. So you're going to have a substantial amount of fire in this building. If you have a 30-foot ceiling, you will have a substantial amount of fire before you even have sprinkler activations in this building. And back to the thermal imaging camera we were talking about earlier, if you have sprinkler activations in a building, there's a very high likelihood that your thermal imager camera will not work because your smoke will be cold. That sprinkler water will cool the smoke down. It'll push all that smoke to the floor. So it can be very difficult to distinguish hot from cold if you have cold smoke inside that building.
Yeah, speaking of smoke, Clark, and I think we're getting short on time, but a couple of points. Because I remember making a error I'll never forget in a large commercial building. And if the listeners get a fire in a commercial building, Halloween or otherwise, and they get smoke out of there, a lot of times we're really programmed to the smoke movement of residential fires because that's what we normally get, pushing smoke. You may open that door, and if you have smoke down to the level of the door that you enter the building, that has went up that 30 feet and banked all the way down and filled this big box. So you may have some lazy smoke and think like it's not much of a well-seated fire, and you can have far more fire than you anticipate, because we're thinking of that lazy smoke maybe in a house where it's just a contents fire. Well, a contents fire here it's a tremendous amount of smoke if you get it down to that level.
Well, and think about the fact too, to your point, Daryl, it's like, and then we show up as benevolent ladies and gentlemen of the fire service, and what do? We introduce oxygen into that fire that's just waiting for it so that it can now reignite.
Yeah. Oh, and another point. You reminded me, it was a fire I was not at, but I was training captain at the time listening to the fire critique. You were talking about that high rack storage and how it can fill with water and fail and start falling. And it was a pet peeve of a battalion chief where it was a church fire and it was running everywhere. And every time he turned around, hey, open up the line. And there would be a line there with nobody on the nozzle. Hey, get on the nozzle. Hey, open up the line. Because people are trained to be workers. They want to be workers. They want to pull ceiling. They want to move stuff. If your job's on the nozzle, stay on the nozzle. The last thing you want to do is turn around for some fire lighting up. The storage has covered the hose, covered the nozzle. You're digging. You can't find it. And it may not seem like you are doing much work when they're just digging through piles or something, but this can flare up. Like we talked about, there's gas cylinders, a lot of lightweight plastics, and just stay on the nozzle and be ready to open that thing up and let other people do the digging and pulling of ceiling and walls up. So we're ready to open that up.
Yeah, on that point, Daryl, your typical Walmart is about 100,000 square feet, and it has a 30-foot roof line, 30-foot ceiling. That's 3 million cubic feet of air inside that building. If we arrive and you have smoke showing to the top of the 9-foot door, you have a significant fire. You already have 3 million cubic feet of smoke inside that building. That is, even if it's just light, wispy smoke coming out of the top of the door, that building is now either two things are happening. Either you have a trash can fire right inside that door, or that building is now full of 3 million cubic feet of smoke, and it's now showing from the door. So commercial, not just commercial tactics, but a commercial mentality as well. You need to recognize and understand what you're looking at. All right, brothers, that's we're getting really close. Captain Mike Dugan, any final thoughts, Frankenstein or Uncle Fester?
Just have a plan for these places and have an idea of what you're going to do, and it will. You got to just pre-plan them if they're in your district.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Captain Dugan. Boring old Captain Shaw, who's not going to put on a costume this Halloween.
Yeah, no, I think to Mike's point is really solid. I mean, the pre-fire planning, we don't, unlike football teams that know they're going to play on Sunday at 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock, we don't get to know when our fires are going to occur and where they're going to occur. So it behooves us when we're out and about, especially if you're a busy company, you have more opportunity to be out there. You're running a lot of calls. Taking your first two and then know what you're going to go look for and then kind of pre-plan that because you want to cement that in your mind. And, looking at the strategic and tactical objectives you're looking to achieve and just walk through that and make sure everyone knows what exactly you're trying to achieve and understands it. Because when you get to this at 3 o'clock in the morning and zero visibility and it's occupied or unoccupied, it's going to be a whole different story.
And Clark, I just want to show you Uncle Fester.
Oh, I think that is actually Uncle Fester dressed like Mike Dugan. If that's a
Oh, come on. Sorry. I think that's hysterical.
Yep, that is perfect.
Perfect. Yep.
All right, Daryl Liggins. Final thoughts. Boring old Daryl Liggins, who's not going to go trick or treat. I guess Daryl Liggins doesn't like free candy either. Anyway, go ahead, Daryl. What does that say?
I can't see it. Can't see it.
Can't
Too
see it.
bright.
You're muted too. You're falling apart, Daryl. Come on. We've been doing this for an
I was
hour.
trying to show the
Come on,
picture
get to
of
the end. Get to the finish line, Daryl.
I was trying to show the picture of the pipe casing, but that's not working there. Hey, I'm going to stick with the trunk or treat. I do think it's a great opportunity this time of year to, do some fun community stuff. When I was a really young kid, I remember it was Easter, and I was riding my little dirt bike. I was probably 6 years old, and a police officer gave us, me and my brother, a little chocolate Easter bunny. It was my first time coming in contact with a police officer, and my last.
Oh, bullshit. Yeah, right.
We got time, Daryl.
Me too, Daryl. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, there we go. There's the pipe casing. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's at the Denver Fire Museum. So, that's it. That's the different ways. I thought it was an excellent little display of a large distributor, a smaller one, and the cellar nozzle. Yeah.
Really big.
Yeah, and then I guess the final thoughts. Thanks to our friends at Key Hose again for sponsoring this. They're a wonderful sponsor. Give them a call, give it a try. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and stick to the basics: flashlights, thermal imagers, turn your bottle on, bundle up, open the nozzle, use large water, and get in the buildings and know your district better than anybody else. Get inside the buildings and look.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I will be on duty for Halloween this year. And when I'm on duty, we will buy about 100 pounds of candy, and we will drive through neighborhoods, and the firemen will sit on the front bumper of the engine, and we'll drive through the neighborhoods, just creep through the neighborhoods and hand out candy to all the kids as we're there. So that's what I'll be dressed up as a fireman for Halloween this year. All right. So yeah, thank you everyone for showing up, and thank you for everyone listening live, and thank you for anyone who's going to listen to the recording. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate the support. We appreciate Key Hose for their support, and we do appreciate and miss our friend and mentor Bill Gustin. And we will see you next month at the November Humpday Hangout. We'll come up with some good content on that one too. I appreciate Captain Dugan for recommending this. This wasn't even on my radar, but that's why we work in teams right there. So until we meet again, brothers and sisters in the fire service, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next month.